So, yeah, the first step really for an evaluative essay is doing revision before the assessment. You probably figured it out by now, but you really can't do as well in an evaluative essay as you would like unless you know your stuff. You can't walk in and simply wing it. Okay, it's not like GCSE where you could possibly do that in your GCSE English language because you only need to know a handful of literary devices and language devices. This is a lot more sophisticated. You need to know your stuff. So, in terms of revision, I like to split revision for English into two different sections. So you've got content revision, where you're looking at stuff that we cover in class, recalling it, trying to solidify it into your long term memory, but also the skills revision. I think that quite a few people focus primarily on content revision and knowing their stuff rather than actually figuring out and revising how to put it into writing, for example, in a way that will get you decent marks. So here's just a few ideas of things that you could do to develop both of those things. And I suggest that you spend equal time on content revision and skills revision, or in some cases, you might want to spend a little bit more time on the one that you think you are weaker with. So, content revision, don't just make it rereading your notes. I get you to write notes in class as like an initial kind of way to get your ideas down and to make sure that you're being productive in lessons. But ultimately, they're not the best thing to look at when you are recalling knowledge because it's pretty boring and sometimes your notes might not make sense, for example, or various different things like that. Instead, what you need to be doing is creating active revision materials, so things like flashcards, synthesis maps of all of the theory, or even mind maps. If you like making mind maps, you could have a topic in the middle and then various different things, branches coming off of that with all of the different theory and topics that we've looked at. Okay. Equally, actively recalling the content with your friends, other people who do English language, or even if they don't do English language, things like making quizzes, testing your friends and things, or actually teaching people as well. One of the best ways that you can develop your confidence is something in knowing something is by teaching it to other people. So if you feel confident about MLE, for example, and you really want to solidify that knowledge, you could introduce your friends to that idea or your parents to that idea and just you know tell them about it, tell them about the language features, the attitudes that people have towards it and things like that. You're much more likely to memorize it and commit it to memory if you tell other people about it. In terms of skills revision, this is where I think most of you would benefit quite a lot from doing this sort of thing. Planning exam questions on Google Classroom, there are loads of past questions and kind of mock evaluative essay statements that you could use to plan as kind of a model or a practice for the real thing. Writing paragraphs under time conditions, checking the mark scheme, see what is needed for the top marks. I keep banging on about synthesis and critiquing and patterns, but what does that actually mean? You can look at the mark scheme to see what people want, what the examiners want from you, and also reading past responses so you know exactly what it is that you need to do. One of the videos I intend to do later on is that we will look through a past evaluative essay that a student wrote in the exam that got near enough full marks or an A star, and we'll really break down what they did, what they incorporated, and how they did it that kind of almost forced the examiner to give them the marks. Okay. Now, the last thing I'm going to do for this video is give you um, I guess, an idea, a flashcard idea for revising both of the assessment objectives at the same time. So, this is something that I would suggest that you do for most of the topics that we've covered, and it's a really good way to consolidate theory but also terminology as well. So, at the top of your flashcard, you want to put something like whatever the topic is. For this example, I've put multicultural London English. Okay. Underneath that, you want to look for some research, check your booklets, whatever it is. Just identify a couple of examples of terminology related to that thing. So MLE is an accent, it's a spoken accent, so therefore we're going to talk about phonological features. So a few of the AO1 examples, like we've spoken about before, is there's these patterns of TH fronting. So rather than using that dental fricative sound like thing, for example, people who have an MLE accent, generally that tends to be replaced with an alveolar plosive, like a t, t in, changing from thing to ting, for example. Um, If you are looking at these examples and you're looking at that symbol and thinking, I'm not sure how I'm going to memorize that, I find phonology quite difficult, remember that for both of your exam papers, you will be given an International Phonetic Alphabet chart. So you can refer to that if you struggle with committing these things to memory. But certainly talking about TH fronting with MLE is a really good thing to discuss. And just by incorporating patterns at the beginning and mentioning that there seems to be a pattern within this variety, well, that starts to build up your AO1, because we know that that is a general pattern in people who have this accent or who speak in this variety. You could then also talk about patterns of slang as well, whatever words that you choose to include here. To be honest, it doesn't really matter. But the main thing that this is showing to you is that you need to know your stuff, but you can commit some of these AO1 examples to memory. So you don't have to sit in the exam panicking about, oh my God, I can't think of an example of a word or a phrase that would be utilized by MLE speakers or whatever. You can just go, right, I've already thought about it. TH fronting, patterns of slang. There you go. That's my AO1 for this section. And then the examiner has to go tick, 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 because all of it is accurate. Okay. Then on the same side of this flashcard, you're going to talk about some AO2. And the main thing that you're doing here is providing some detail, but you're also providing free theorists, because as I've said before, free theories per paragraph is enough to display your knowledge of the concepts, but also your ability to synthesize them together. So Paul Kurzweil, he was the person who originally coined the term MLE, but we know that MLE is a little bit outdated now. So we know that people like Sue Fox, for example, argued that MLE was actually spreading beyond London because of popular culture, things like grime and things like that being listened to by people all across the United Kingdom. And then ultimately, our best friend Rob Drummond concluded that these linguistic features were being utilized in Manchester, and so he coined the new term MUBE as an alternative term for it. So on one side of a flashcard, you have got all of the AO1 you need for that topic, all of the AO2 you need for that topic, and you have also got a clear way to get band 5 for both assessment objectives. Okay, so you can do this with any other accents, for example, from Ak and Dial. You could also do it with the various different small topics that we looked at in different modules. So when we looked at language change, for example, you could look at emoji and you could put all on one side. AO1 features related to the use of emoji in internet language, and then free theorists that all link together that you could include in a paragraph. Okay, right, I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully you have found that useful.